All right, let's kick her off. Or check, and I'm gonna go live here. To one, and we're a blast off. Good day, top of the week to everyone. I am your host, Addy Net, with the Modern Loan Officer. And today we have a special guest and a very important person in the industry right now, Mr. Mark Meek. How you doing today, Mark?
Great, Addy. How are you? Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. And one reason why I really wanted Mark is a financial advisor. And right now, and our hearts go out to everybody that is affected by the COVID-19 virus, and not only the physical implications of the virus, but also the financial side. And I personally trust Mark with my own finances. So bringing him on is a huge testimony. And Mark, I just wanted to hear, like, would you mind explaining to everybody, like, what has the last 4 to 6 weeks been like for you, man? Like, what type of calls are you getting? And just give us some insight.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I'd say it's really been a mixed bag. As you mentioned before, a lot of stuff happening right now that no
Mm-hmm.
one could ever anticipate, that's completely out of everyone's control. And a really big segment of the clients that I work with are closely held business owners,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in the bar restaurant scene in the local downtown Portland here. So it's been pretty tough, honestly. That's a lot of calls where there's really nothing we could do or anyone could do besides just prepare for the best and embrace.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's been kind of a challenge, but I'd say for the most part, a lot of kind of our normal 9 to 5, or people like yourself in the professional space,
Yeah.
a lot of the calls have been favorable for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Being in this industry since 2012,
Mm-hmm.
have to say it's been pretty easy. I could have pretty much told most of my clients to invest in almost anything that's market based and have a positive and favorable rate of return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think really where a lot of our clients are finding peace of mind and just reassurance that what they're doing is the right thing right now is the fact that we've been having what's called lifeboat drills,
Mm.
uh, kind of leading up to this, right?
Yeah.
Because the way to look at it is when we're having our annual review meetings, we're looking at favorable returns for the most part. Obviously, there was a little blip Q4 of 2018 with the Brexit situation and everything else going
Mm.
on, but usually I would say, hey, number one, we need to make sure that what are we going to talk about when these returns are negative? What are the
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that are going to be happening in our heads? What are our feelings and our emotions going to tell us? And just kind of like jumping on the lifeboat, right? What are we going to do when that happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of my clients, especially towards the retirement space, 55
Yeah.
plus, that's really paid off. It was kind of annoying, like, okay, Mark, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen next time the market crashes, but we've been in such a long bull market
Yeah.
that it was inevitable to happen. Just
Mm-hmm.
kind of came out of nowhere. So
So are you seeing, like, I'm mostly curious, like, and I'm sure a lot of people, the minute the stock market started dipping there 6 weeks ago, were checking their accounts, and, like, is that when your phone blows up and they're just screaming, or like, I want to hear what people who are seeing, like, dramatic 20 to 40% decreases in their accounts is like, what are those conversations like?
no, that's
It's
a,
got
a
to be
really good
hard.
question. Yeah, and honestly, because we've been doing a lot of those lifeboat drills and just kind
Mm,
of preparing, I'm a huge fan of having a fair amount of liquidity on hand at all times for these scenarios.
mm-hmm.
So even a lot of my clients that are investing a fair amount of money with me, I want to make sure at all times through various instruments that we have cash or some kind of cash equivalent on the sideline to be able to tap into immediately that dry powder and take advantage of some of these sales that are going on right now with the
Right.
market.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say a lot of there was two different types of phone calls.
Yep.
I tried to preempt it. So there were a couple of Mondays there where I was just like, hey, clear my afternoon. Like I'm just going to be calling
Mm-hmm.
people and just touching base and trying to be proactive
Yep.
because I think a lot of people just want to know that we care. And the good people in our profession, just like yours, really do care about the people that we work with.
Right. Right.
So that helped a lot from some of those kind of fear-based phone calls, like Mark, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
But really, the a majority of the calls that I was getting was, "Hey, Mark, when are we going to invest? You've been
Mm,
talking to me about this for 4 or 5 years. I've been giving you crap for not investing my money and keeping it safe."
right, right,
And
right,
obviously, to some extent, that's the tough part is when things are going well. It's the fear and greed cycle. Things are going really, really well. People get greedy and want to jump in while things are hot, and when things aren't going too hot, kind of human nature pops in, and then we turn from greed to fear and we want to get out.
right.
And it's the exact opposite of what the
Hmm.
logical thing should be, which is jumping in when things are low and potentially selling or holding when things are going very, very well.
I think
So
that's a
the
really good point right there. And I sorry to cut you off, mostly
oh,
for a recap in the sense that like, hey, the money's made in the right timing. So if you can get in on a lower market, and this extends even to real estate, outside of just stocks, that's when you're really making your money. So it's great to hear, before this all happened, you had a plan in place. So
they
you
were well
had,
positioned.
you're
Yep.
well positioned. And to also, I really, the headliner of the interview too is, maybe this doesn't speak to your clients specifically, but I'm sure a lot of people out there who are struggling are wondering, Mark, like, should I tap into my investment accounts if I maybe wasn't prepared and didn't have 6 to 12 months in overhead reserves? And now I'm strapped. Like, I've lost my job, Mark. I'm 30 to 45 days out, but I've got, maybe the small 401k. What would you say would be a good move or a good strategy if you were considering tapping into those accounts?
That's a really good question, and especially with some of my business owner clients that are really feeling it right now, we've had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these discussions. So I'd say two things, right? Obviously, at the end of the day, it's your money that you've saved for, and ideally, we wouldn't tap into it, number one, early, so we're hitting that 10% penalty,
Mm-hmm.
or just in general at this stage, so we're not having to pay taxes while the market is low. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a triple whammy from that standpoint. But at the
Okay.
end of the day, if it's your money, if you need it and there's no other options, there's no shame in taking that money and recovering,
Do,
right?
do
Keeping
you
the
think a
family
lot of
safe.
people will be waiving those 10% fees on their 401 if they do tap into that? Or would that be a case by case, company by company thing?
Yeah, and as of right now, then you beat me to the punch there. So
Oh,
that's
sorry.
another advantage of doing it is right now the government, the federal government is waiving that 10% early distribution penalty.
Okay.
So I need to make sure to disclose that I'm not sure as of April 13th, 2020, that that's the
Mm-hmm.
case.
Sure.
But based on some of the literature that was distributed a couple weeks ago with the CARES Act,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that was really top of mind.
Okay. Okay. So really important, guys. Like, get with your financial advisor or get with your account rep if you are going to access those funds to try to float for a bit and read the fine print and really understand what you're getting into. Because, Mark, I'm sure you could agree with this. There's so much media out there, whether it's the internet or the news, and like, I think everybody's situation is so unique to like who their mortgage servicer is, where their funds are sitting to that company. So I don't think we can stress enough to read the fine print and check with your company, and don't just assume because you see a headline that it applies to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And even if you're tapping in early, you're still gonna have to pay those taxes. But yeah, number one, do your research and make sure you have a 100% conclusive evidence
Mm-hmm.
that that's going to be the case for your situation. But yeah, I would say no harm in that if there's literally no other option.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of my clients about is with, as you know, and you've talked about on previous episodes, with
Yeah.
our extremely low interest rate environment,
Mm-hmm.
the cost of borrowing money is extremely low.
Right.
So whether or not it's going talking to your bank, taking advantage of some of these loan options, the PPP loan, the SBA disaster loan,
Mm-hmm.
if you're an entrepreneur or some kind of sole proprietor or contractor, but even checking in with your banker, if you can get a personal loan, getting a consumer credit card that has like a 0% for
Mm-hmm.
12 months financing, anything to get your hands on liquidity
Right.
for the time being and using it intelligently and not blowing it, but using it for that safety net, that's
Mm-hmm.
a huge, huge advantage. And even another thing that's kind of unconventional that I've been working with my clients
Mm-hmm.
on is you have some relationships with people, whether parents, mentors, business leaders that
Mm-hmm.
are sitting on liquidity right now, are in good shape. And if you think about their ability to get a return on investment in a safe kind of bond like environment today,
Yeah.
with interest rates being so low, a lot of our clients are doing these private lending agreements with their friends,
Mm-hmm.
families, coworkers, parents to say, hey, you know what? 3% interest, 4% interest, that's a win
Mm-hmm.
for their client. And as long as, or excuse me, for their friend, as well as them for getting that money borrowed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way to just kind of help people out and at the same time take advantage of the situation of being a low interest rate environment is that it's cheap to borrow, but even for the investors, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to get a solid rate of return right now. So a lot of people are kind of blending that spirit of giving and lending a hand with also, capitalizing as a win-win, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and another point too, Mark, I wanted to set, and this is one thing why I really enjoy you as a financial advisor is you aren't just all about investing in stocks. You've
Oh no.
super advised in diversifying a portfolio, and you've been a real advocate in our market toward investing in real estate. So, on the basis of liquidity, investment opportunities, are you hearing from your book of business and your network of people that are preparing to get into real estate and maybe make a move in the next quarter or two on some deals out there?
Yes, absolutely. And as you know,
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure people, if they have any inkling within the next, 3 to 12 to 18 months that they want to purchase a property in some form or fashion, whether it's for flipping, whether it's for potential rental income,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be pre-qualified. Like I was saying before, you got to have that dry powder ready.
Mm-hmm.
When the opportunity strikes, you're ready to take advantage of it, no strings attached, and everyone in your corner is ready to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one aspect I think is just to be prepared. And frankly, you and I were just talking about this
Yep.
before we even went live. So another plug on that front. But I would say right now it's kind of interesting because we haven't really seen, after talking to 3 or 4 of my buddies, including my father, that's in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really seen a lot of dips in property value or people
Right.
taking the price point down. So I don't necessarily think right now is the time to say, hey, let's get everything ready and pull the trigger. It's probably in a wait and see type of environment. With that being said, you never want to essentially quote unquote time the market.
Right.
If the right opportunity is there, take it. But typically, because it's been so apparent that the equity market, the stocks, mutual funds, ETFs are taking that hit,
Mm-hmm.
that's primarily for my clients that have the money on the sideline. Even some people that had it parked for real estate sometimes would deviate and move to the equities just to take advantage of that huge dip. But that being said, this is a huge point kind of overall for why I think real estate is huge. For my clients that are in their 50s plus 55, 60,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the number one concern that they're telling me when we're talking about their retirement distribution plan,
Okay.
which is a whole different ballgame from
Mm-hmm.
investing,
Yep.
is their number one fear is that they're going to run out of money. And no matter how much you save, no matter how great of a position you are, we don't know when we're going to pass away. We don't know if we're going
Mm-hmm.
to live to 110 or get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Right.
And we also have zero control, and it's really clear right now over the economy and tax
Mm-hmm.
rates, interest rates, pandemics.
Yep.
So, one of the most crucial components of a retirement distribution plan for me, actually, number one, is to make sure our clients, in one way or another, outside of Social Security, have some kind of guaranteed base income
Mm-hmm.
that, for the most part, is going to be hitting their mailbox every single month for the rest of their life. And one of my favorite avenues to get there is through rental properties,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not only some of the tax advantages and the equity building opportunity from an accumulation standpoint, but once that mortgage is paid off, you're going to be cash flowing that rent. And
Right.
even if you need to give your tenants a break for a couple months, if they lose their jobs, I mean that's up to the individual.
Right.
It's still going to create a income stream that is almost impossible to replicate if we're just taking kind of the old school 4% distribution from their accounts
Right.
in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
So, not to go off on too much of a tangent there,
No, that's
but
a
this is a
that's a really
prime
good one.
time for my clients right now that own rental properties that are huge for their retirement distribution plan, they're not nervous at all compared to my clients that don't have those base income streams and that are really relying on the market to perform to
Mm-hmm.
get their retirement income.
So there's what's the maybe you could help me out with this, but just trying to compare, say, rental income to investment portfolio income. Like, say I was making $1,000 net cash flow on a couple of properties, right? Per month, $1,000 in rental, positive rental income.
Sure.
What type of stock portfolio in a, relatively even market, like say 5 to 7% returns,
Okay.
what size of account would I need to make $1,000 per month? Like,
You'd
just
probably need
estimated
about 250,000.
liquid.
Yeah, well, of a portfolio that you can
Mm-hmm.
draw off of your earnings instead of just, tapping into your principal. It's kind of the old school
Right.
4% is the safe withdrawal rate of your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you think about it, if you have $1 million in an account and you take 4%, that's about 40K per year.
Right.
And, so just kind of reverse engineering the numbers, 2 to 250 is probably the safe um, portfolio size to assume. But the problem, right, is the volatility associated with that account
Right.
is like right now for the last 12 years, maybe getting $1,000 a month from your portfolio is no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking to get 5 to 7%, you have to take relatively substantial amount of risk to get that, which means that you're exposed. And
Mm-hmm.
right now you may have lost 20, 25% of your portfolio, depending on how it's allocated,
Right.
which means that your 4% withdrawal rate is now close to maybe $700 a month, maybe 650.
Unreal.
So it's not that it's a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
but with rental income, it's pretty stable, and,
Right.
and it's not necessarily going to be company default risk. It's going to be, hey, can your renters pay their mortgage? And if they can't,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Work something out with them. But for the most part, 9.5 times out of 10, if you ask any of our clients if they'd rather take income from their portfolio or income from a rental property, they're going to choose the rental property bar none.
Right.
Not just because of the safety, but also the equity that's carried in that. If they really want to get out of it, they can then turn it into a lump sum of cash.
Right, right. That's a really good point. So trying to bring this to kind of some final innings in the game and the show here, I think if we bring this back to a little more of just the basics. So what about all of our people listening in the audience and real estate agents, home buyers, home sellers, maybe who have never worked with a financial advisor? Like they might be a renter right now, they might be a home buyer. Maybe they've got, a 401 account. What are some first couple steps you suggest maybe they could do from home just to think about? Or how do people start working with a financial advisor and being more strategic? Because we've got a lot of time at home. So we could definitely get organized right now. And if you're going to choose, like, hey, I'm going to get my finances in order for my, self-help project, could you speak on that just a little bit? Someone who hasn't worked with anyone, where would you start that wouldn't be intimidating?
Yeah. And, for me, that is because I've talked about it. Really, there's three segments of clients that I work with fairly closely.
Mm-hmm.
One is closely held business owners, as I mentioned. The other is individuals, families that are about 55 plus, about
Mm-hmm.
5 years or so or less away from retirement, where we're creating a distribution plan to essentially make sure they never run out of money, but
Right.
also can leave a little bit of a legacy for their family.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my favorite segment, and again, and just full transparency, I feel like that's like a superpower nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're working with a financial advisor out of the gates and it's your first time investing, you are not necessarily going to be a paycheck for that advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really fair to just kind of throw that out there,
Yeah, yeah.
is that a lot of people think, okay, what's in it for me? What am I going to sell that person, or what are they going to buy, or what stock?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, a good financial advisor, certified financial planner types, fiduciaries, people that aren't necessarily looking for suitable investments for people, but what's actually in their best interest.
Yeah, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of work up front where we don't get compensated. It's very similar to what real estate agents do, almost
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what you do, Addie, just a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Mm-hmm.
That before doing anything, you have to be willing to spend a couple hours over a couple different meetings, just really trying to figure out what's important.
Right.
What are those goals are? Where do they see themselves personally, professionally, financially in the
Mm-hmm.
next 3 to 5 years? Where's the current snapshot of their balance sheet?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have good cash flow management? Is
Mm-hmm.
their budget in order? Is their savings in order? Right? Just a lot of the basics that aren't necessarily going to say, hey, give me your money, we're going to invest it. But the way that I look at my business, our business in general, and just if we want to truly be a good advocate for those in the community,
Yep.
you have to start those relationships for long term potential,
Right.
not only just to help them get in a better place. One of my missions is essentially at the end of the day, anyone I talk to, I want to make sure that when we're done having that conversation,
Mm-hmm.
they have a better relationship with money. No, whether it's just educational,
Yeah.
emotional, just kind of feel better about having a resource. So, first steps, those typical first steps
Mm-hmm.
that we talk about are cash flow management, budgeting, debt elimination,
Yeah.
and even risk management.
Yeah.
That's one thing that a lot of people think about with financial planning is that it's all based on investments and, long-term savings.
Mm.
We also need to make sure that we're prepared for when things don't go well.
Yep.
So, helping people build out their emergency fund and what are the right tactics and strategies to build it. um, you know, Auditing your basic insurances, right? If you are a homeowner or if you have a spouse or kids, you need to make sure you're checking off your life insurance and your
Mm-hmm.
long-term disability insurance. Just make sure you're fully aware of how it works,
Mm-hmm.
because then nothing else would ever matter in your investment plan if you're not going to be around to pay the bills for your family.
I
So,
love that you brought that up, man. But with the going back to the transparency piece, where it's like you got to work with somebody that it has your back. One of the good gals or guys that are out there, because that is super important. And the transparency piece is so key. And I think not only with loan officers, mortgage advisors, financial advisors, there's a lot of stigma or bad reputation from someone that got burned. So
and it's usually warranted too, because there's some bad things that happen with our professions, unfortunately.
yeah, super unfortunately. And I think that was a really good thing to bring up. I'm staring down at my notes right here. Awesome to bring that up and working with quality people and connecting with a group like MLO to get a solid referral to someone that's trusted within the community. Secondly, I want to note the budget piece. When you're going through some of these introduction conversations and meetings, whether it's web conferencing or a phone call, a lot of advisors are going to walk through just some basic budgeting that has nothing to do with like sign here or invest here. And I really cannot stress the importance of taking that consult right off the bat because you're going to learn a lot. And we've got a lot of time at home, everyone. So it's like, hey, if you're going to invest 30 to 60 minutes into Tiger King, let's take a second and maybe we could, work a spreadsheet template and prioritize what we have debts owed, what we're going to pay, maybe adjusting some savings goals. And just because you're not in a position today, say you're unemployed, say you're living off of savings, it does not mean that you can't work on this stuff. So if you take an educational approach today, who knows in a year from now, like you might be rolling in it and it's steaming and the economy has got a lot of opportunities. And because you took this time at home to educate, to network, you're now in a position to make a move, which wouldn't have happened if you just pressed next episode and put it on the back burner. So,
Exactly. And honestly, I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes people think it's a little bit too slow and boring, but I'd rather measure twice and cut once. And
totally. Yep.
for a lot of my clients, we don't actually move forward with a recommendation that I implement on their behalf for
Mm-hmm.
typically like 8 to 12 months.
Yep.
A lot of the times it's working within what they already have at work, making sure they're
Mm-hmm.
fully taking advantage of their employer benefits, making sure they're cleaning up some accounts from the past, just getting their budget in order, and just kind of educating people on what's actually possible
Mm-hmm.
and what are the capabilities that they have based on their budget, their cash flow, and their income.
Mm-hmm.
And really down the road, once all of those foundations are set, that's when I'm typically comfortable making recommendations like, okay, now's a good time to open up a Roth IRA. Or, hey, you know what? Let's open up that brokerage account. let's get some money invested in the market, and
Mm-hmm.
but it has to all be within the appropriate balance of financial planning.
Right.
So that's why we operate off of the Board of Certified Financial Planners curriculum, and
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes to have to jump through all the hoops from a client standpoint.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I'd rather have them feel comfortable, know that what they're doing is truly the right thing, instead of just having the first phone call and saying, "Hey, you got to buy Apple."
Right.
That's just unsuitable, and that's what the old school stockbrokers are for, and
Yeah.
that's what Wolf of Wall Street's for.
Oh
Don't
yeah.
need me for that.
No one needs that. And I think to kind of round this out, Mark, and come to a conclusion is like, I really felt a string there when we go back to like, even if you're not in the best financial position right now in your life, which not a lot of people are, it's a very small amount of people who could make a $500,000 liquid investment right now. If you're looking at the population of the world, it's
Yes,
never too late to start, because huge changes in your life, especially financial changes, take a long time, and they don't even start accumulating until you start on the effort side. So like
it's a
once
marathon.
it's a marathon, and even if you're at home right now and say you're on furlough, you only have a couple of $1,000s in your checking account, doesn't mean that you can't take that couple $1,000s very seriously and be like, hey, Mark, I want to buy a house in 2 years. Okay, great. What's the steps here? Because you're going to be back to work and you're going to be thriving.
Well,
Here are
first of all, you got to call up my guy Addy.
well, whoever it is, I'm just more speaking to the point of like, hey, it's never
That's what I would
too,
say.
yeah, it's never too late to plan. It's never too late to like build out that spreadsheet of where you're spending your money. Maybe you've got a credit card right now that you're paying 30% interest on that's completely stopping you from saving a few $100s a month. So I think I just want to conclude it to the end is like, it's a relationship. It's a marathon, and you just got to start at one point. And great advisors like Mark and there's a lot of other good guys out there are going to help you through that and look at it as a decade over decade investment. So anything else to add to that there, Mark?
No, I would just say last thing right now that comes across the table a lot when I'm working with clients are kind of in that mid range where
Mm-hmm.
they have money but they don't have a ton. They still have a little bit of debt. Maybe they're a couple years out of school, especially my clients that are in the dental physician space, medical field.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think of today, everything is all kind of an interest rate game.
Right.
And you have to think about, like Addy was saying, hey, if you got a credit card spitting off 25% interest every month, let's put every single dollar humanly possible to get that thing taken care of.
Stop the bleeding.
Because, a lot of times people are coming to me with these giant credit card balances saying, hey, my dad said now's the best time to get in the market. And at the end of the day, yeah, it probably is. Maybe you could split it a little bit and put some
Mm-hmm.
money in the market, but pay down debt. But you have to think about the opportunity cost of not paying that 25% bearing card down.
Yep.
You have to get 25% on the offense in your investment portfolio to even break even with that. And
And
that
let's
is
let's
virtually
loop that
impossible.
right back, because that is a huge point, Mark. So say you're getting drained $500 a month on interest payments for a credit card. You would need roughly about $125,000 liquid, based on the math we did earlier, to supplement that loss off of interest.
Yeah.
$125,000 liquid to pay off where you're being hemorrhaged on a credit card debt. So you got to look at your
Yeah.
debt as being just as important as your investments. And I'm not trying to turn this into like a credit counseling thing, but like, I think
That's
going
what a
back
lot
to,
of my initial meetings are, though, Addison,
right,
with clients. Is it's not about the investing; it's about getting their financial security in a better position with emergency funds, debt, overall balance sheet ratios, et cetera, so that way they can purchase property and they can save for retirement without having to worry about paying Mastercard
right.
25% of their balance.
Oh, MasterCard will never be a sponsor of the show now. Thanks.
Sorry,
No,
Visa.
I'm
No,
just joking. I'm just joking. But what was that old? I'm not a quote guy, but was that a penny saved is a penny earned? Was that Abraham
exactly.
Lincoln?
I don't know. He's on the penny though, so must
I
be
think
him.
it is. I think it is. Well, hey, Mark, we're hitting about 30 minutes here. I really hope that many people got great takeaways here, and not only the investor but also someone looking to make some changes financially and start a plan today. So Mark, hey, thanks for being one of the good guys and gals out there leading the industry with transparency, honesty, and some morals, and leading us all through. So thank you so much, Mark. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for trusting me and having me on the show here. And hope at least one person could take some of that and implement it, because now is a really good time to create some opportunity for the long term.
No, we appreciate it, Mark, and be safe out there.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Boom.